Okay, this is a quick tutorial on how to do the Koala Stuffie from a Creative Medley. I have a 6-needle PR620 and I've got it loaded with my color choices for my koala ears. So the first step, I follow the instructions that were printed out for us, and the first step, or I'm sorry, that she made up for us, is to go ahead and do the first outline stitch of where the ears are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, once that's done, I go ahead and lay my fabric over top of the ear placement, and this guy I'm actually making in white fleece. So I've laid down the piece, and according to our instructions, next we're going to do the stitch color 2, which is the ear tack down, and stitch color 3, which is the ear accent placement. So I'm going to go ahead and let that go. And while that's usually going, I get my material ready that's going to be the accent color for the ears. So I'll go ahead and do that while the placement tack down for the accent fabric is there. We're going to have a little fun with this guy, a little blingy fabric here, and I do have the Heat and Bond light on the back. So I go ahead and lay that down over it, and I know I'm using a lot of fabric. Normally I would be a little bit more stingy, but I want this to be able to be seen. So I go ahead and have that down, and I'm going to do our next step, which is going to be color 4, stitch your accent tack ears down. Are trimmed. The tack down is done. I trimmed them like I would any other applique. And now we're going to go on to step 5, which is I chose to do the satin stitch, so it's going to satin stitch around the ears. Okay, so now we are done with step number 5, moving on to step number 6, which is going to be to attach the back of the ears. And then we're going to go ahead and do the arm placement for the koala's arms. So right now I am just putting my fleece stretchy side down to cover my ears, making sure that they're all covered. And then we are going to go ahead and stitch our ears. Alright, that brings us up to step 8. We've got our placement stitched down for the arms. Now I've layered my 2 fabrics that I'm putting together for the arms. Mine are just white, so I didn't have to worry about material with a pattern, but if you did, you want your pattern with your front arms face down and the back of the arms face up. So basically the 2 pretty sides together that you'd like to see. I did add, one of the things she says on here is if you want your arms a little thicker, to add a layer of felt, which I did because I have found that adding stuffing to the arms makes it difficult for me at the final stitch out going around the body. So I'm going to try this and see how I like it, having a little bit bulkier in the arms without the stuffing. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and do stitch color 8 to sew the arms together. Okay, all of my ears are cut out. I used my pinking shears, went along the edges there, did the same thing for the little arms that have that layer of felt on them, and I'm going to go ahead. I use a chopstick. I try to be very careful around the edges so I don't poke holes. I'm sure I should be looking for a better tool, but I haven't yet. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these out, and I'm going to hoop and get ready to get started on the body. And the ears and the arms are now flipped. These are awesome, super, super, super simple to flip inside out, especially if this is your first one. You are going to love it. I will be adding a little stuffing to the ears just because I think I will like it better that way. But the arms, I do like how thick they are with that added piece of felt. I don't think they need any stuffing at all, and they feel really nice and thick and have a little bit of sturdiness to them. So now over to the hoop, and we're going to get started. Okay, I've got my little guy all ready to go. I picked all my colors to stitch out. I'm going to be using red accent pieces for him with a silver nose again. So what we're going to do on this one is hoop the stabilizer, and she prefers cutaway for this step. I am low on cutaway, so I'm kind of cheating here. I've got a piece of tearaway, but I also laid a piece of some cutaway over top of it because I don't have my very big thick cutaway that I can lay down for that size of a hoop. So that's what I've done. It's still there. I've done it before. It will support the stitches enough for me. I don't usually see any adverse effects with it. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch the placement line, lay down the white fabric. So I've got the placement stitch with the cutaway and tearaway there, and now I have my white felt, and I am making sure that the stretch goes side to side, meaning that when you tug it this way, it's going to have some give to it. So when you pull it, that's where you're going to see your stretch. And according to the instructions, she has told us to do it that way so that we have a nice little fat chubby koala. Chubby koala, and that's what I'm going for. I want mine to be chubby and not long and skinny. So I'm going to lay that down, and then we're also going to go ahead and do the fabric tack down, which is number 2, and then I'll also go through and do stitch color number 3 for my feet placement stitch. And I'll come back and show you what that looks down as we're going to lay our fabric over the placement stitches. So we just finished step number 4, and that was to lay our feet placement down on the koala so that we know where to set it. I do have the Heat and Bond light on the back of this fabric. And again, I'm going to line that up there and then set it to stitch. And what I love about this is you can use your scraps up on this. You can use little pieces. It doesn't have to all coordinate. It can be any color that you want. But again, I'm using bigger pieces so you guys can see what's going on. And even this was a scrap of something I had left over. So go ahead and stitch that out. And then once that's done, I'm going to trim around the fabric just like I would with an applique. And I'm going to finish the feet stitch and the toes for number 5 and 6. And again, I chose to do the satin stitch on that one. So once that's done, we will come back. We'll be moving on to his little silver nose. Okay, we are moving on to 10, 11, and 12, which is the black of the eyes, the pupil of the eyes, and the mouth. I've got it all set up. We're on step 10. Now this is when I grabbed my little scraps of water-soluble stabilizer that you keep and you're not quite sure why you keep them. They're perfect for this part here because you just need a little bit to keep those stitches from sinking in. So let's go ahead and stitch those out. Okay, now that we have our eyes, nose, and mouth, which I don't know if I can get in there for you to see, all stitched, we have done our left arm placement, which is step number 13. We're on to 14 now. So now I am going to be placing my arm down for stitching. One of the things to watch for is for the arms to curve up. That way you know that that is the hand. So sometimes I lay it down and look to see just to make sure it's doing that little arm up movement, which is hard to see. I apologize. But I am going to use my blue painter's tape and go ahead and lay that down, tape it down, and stitch my tack down for my left arm, and then I'll do the same thing for the right arm. Okay, I did pull it out a little bit so it'd be easier to see, but I do go ahead and just lay that down in there, tape it right where it's going to stitch over, and this blue painter's tape is very inexpensive, so I am not stingy with it, and I just make sure I've really got a good grip on there. I realize I live in Ohio, and we're starting to lose a little light in my room there, and my might look a little dark too, so I brought it out here. I know when I tacked that down, it looked like it got some of the blue tape in there. It didn't. It just kind of moved the tape it was going. So I've got my arm on there. Now it's time for the ear. We went ahead and did the placement stitch for the ear. And then again, I laid it down with the inside of my ear facing down against the body. Now we've got it laid down with about that 1/4 of an inch or so over top of the line, a little bit on an angle so that it'll flop back up on an angle for me. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in the machine and go ahead and stitch that down. Then we'll be just doing the exact same thing on the other side. We've got all the arms and ears stitched. I think one ear is going to be a little bit different than the other, but hey, that's what makes them cute. I'm going to take all this off in just a minute and get it out of the way as it goes around. But right now we're putting wrong sides together. I've pressed my fabric to get that nice crisp edge. And then here's when I lay it out and take a look at exactly what you're going to see when your koala or bunny or whatever animal is peeking out. So I like just the tips of his little arms to be sticking out, so I'm going to go ahead and lay that there. And then we're on stitch number 21, which is going to be just to stitch down that bottom placement so it doesn't move when we get a nice little stitch there. And then I'm going to come back, we're going to lay our last piece of peekaboo over, and then the entire piece that's going to become his back placement is done. Now I'm laying over my top, and I actually want to move that back just a bit because I don't want that. I am using a tight, I'm using a cotton fabric with no stretch, so I want to make sure that I don't overlap these too closely, and I'll adjust this once I'm off camera because I don't want it to be too tight. And the fun shimmery silver is going to be my back, so that's going to go face down over the entire thing. And then I am simply going to let it do its final outline. We will flip this inside out and stuff it, and I will come back once the final outline is done and we've got it off the hoop so you can take a look at what that means. So right here we are on number 22 of 22 doing the final outline. Okay, here we have our hooped little eggie. I am going to pop it all out, turn it inside out, let you guys see what it looks like flat, and then I will come back as we stitch it closed. I am going to use the ladder stitch because some wonderful women on this site told me to use that, and so I did, and it has been the best way to finish these off. If you don't know what a ladder stitch is, go to YouTube and just put in ladder stitch on Stuffies or ladder stitch alone, and there's plenty of tutorials to learn how to do it. Here's the little guy now that I have pulled everything off and cut. I will give you a recommendation to not trim too close. I'd rather go back and trim later more if I have to, because trust me, if you get too close you will have a hole, and I learned that on my first bunny. So just make sure you leave enough. And now I am going to go ahead and go in there and stuff my little guy. Finding this hard to do with one hand, but I am going to go in there and stuff him up, and then after that I will ladder stitch him, flip it, and then tuck in my insides and ladder stitch him closed. So I will come back after he's stuffed right before I ladder stitch and show you what he looks like. Okay, so I am going to play around with the stuffing for a little bit here and figure out just how much I want in him, but I just thought I'd show you the final here. He has not been ladder stitched shut yet, but this is the nice and fluffy stretchy back that we have on him. Here's the front. Let me flip the little guy here. See, they're pretty simple to do even with one hand. Get a little close up there, sorry. Don't have a stand for my phone. So when he's open, and once I figure out this fluff, this will lay flat, I'll post final pictures of him. And here he is. Again, I need to finish up the fluff down here and get those legs a little flatter. But for anybody that wondered about the size, this is my Kindle. So you know the standard size of a Kindle. This is the 7x11 size. He is very large. I like how big he is. This is right next to the instruction sheet actually on how to get through it. But he's a big guy. So super, super cute. You can tell here that my ears are not perfect. This little ear over here is a little bit different than the ear over here, but I bet if we were at the zoo we would notice that about koalas too. His arms look fantastic. I think they're good placement, and I will include a couple pictures with this. Sorry about the things on my table. You can tell I clean up after I'm all done, but that's what he looks like. And for all of you that are visual learners like me, I hope that this helped you, took away the fear, and makes you want to just dive right in, because these are just absolutely adorable. Have fun stitching. So here he is, all finished and ready to find a home.